We're live. It is 7:01. It's just kind of nailed it there. Tonight, I want to talk about a couple of things. One is last night we talked about the 1400 horsepower LV3, LV1, LV3 V6, which is basically the V6 version of an LT1, the Gen 5 LS and then the LT. This is a V6 version of that. And the guys at Skog and Dickey, and it's Kurt Urban, right? Yeah, I think Urban did it. Let me check. I want to make sure. Yeah, Kurt does great stuff over there. But last night we talked about the math associated with I had in the comments of somebody had posted something about that they're very, very cool, very, very powerful 1400 horsepower twin turbo V6 deal that they did based on that 4.3 liter LV1, LV3. And they said, hey, it made this much at this much boost and this much at this much boost. And so my question was, okay, well, if we use our power boost formula, that should tell us that, hey, that motor's making really good NA power, it's making 430 horsepower. And then somebody in the comments had said, well, it made 375 horsepower. And so that spiraled me off in another direction. I'm like, well, how is that possible? So that's what our discussion was last night. If you missed it, my discussion was, how can it only make that much and then make this much at this much boost? How is that possible? And is there something that I don't know about that? Like, I was just questioning that. I wasn't saying that it didn't do that or it can't do that or anything like that, because not what our discussion was. The discussion was me going over some things that I know that can help change that, like having really cold charge air, different kinds of fuel and stuff, and things that can have it make more power than we see from this formula, because the formula is not absolute. But the real thing is, as it turns out, because both Kurt reached out to me and the guys from Skog and Dickey reached out to me and said, hey, the reason that the math isn't working is because we never ran the thing NA. I'm like, oh, well, that makes a lot more sense. And so I got to ask a couple of questions, and I want to get more. I'm trying to get one of those guys or both of those guys on, like, to do an interview. So we're going to ask them questions about it. One of the interesting things that I found out is, obviously, they didn't run it naturally aspirated, so we don't know how that calculates, but we, and Kurt said the same thing. Yeah, it's going to do something like that because that's what they do. But one of the interesting things was that they ran this thing with port injection and not with DI. Because that was one of my questions. I'm like, did you run DI? Did you run DI and port? Like, he said, no, we just ran it with port injection. He said that's what he was able to do. So I thought it was interesting. But then when you hear that information, I'm like, well, okay, now I have a whole bunch of other questions. Did you change the piston design and how much did the heads flow, and like what kind of cam did you, all the stuff that we want to know. So that would be really good information that we could hopefully get into detail about if I can arrange to get those guys on some kind of interview, and you guys can ask questions, and it could be a live feed thing. It would be kind of a fun deal, because that's an amazing amount of power, and it's also there's a lot of other coolness once we look at the nuanced stuff, like what kind of fuel do they use, what were the air temperatures if we had it, how good of an intercooler did you use, what was the intake like, all the stuff. I want to kind of geek out on this and find out, and they can answer all that stuff, and they can tell us, why they did certain things that they did and stuff. And obviously there's no shortage of power there. there's lots and lots of power. So I want to find out, like, what stock things that they used. And like I said, there's a lot of good questions. There's a lot of good discussion there. So hopefully I can get those guys on. So that mystery is kind of solved. And I told Kurt, I said, look, I don't know why I was going through all of this. And listening to stuff on the internet, I'm like, I know better than that. I should have just came and asked you guys. It's like, yeah, probably so. Go just right to the source, go to us, or go to the Skog and Dickey guys and find out what the deal is. And I mean, it's not like I can't reach out to those guys. So, in the future, lesson learned, go to the source and get those guys to answer the questions, and then you'll be fine. Get it directly, and don't get a second or third or fourth hand. It doesn't work out that well. Also today we took the dogs up in the hills for a walk, and we found immediately, almost immediately after getting out of the truck, found a baby alligator lizard. Actually, the dogs found it and were trying to chase it. And Lisa said, "Hey, what's that? Is that a snake?" "No, it's a little lizard." I said, it's an alligator lizard." So I ran over and I captured it and was holding it and going, "Ooh, wow, this is cool." It's a beautiful day. It was 75 or whatever out. So it was like a spring day and the grass is green and it's awesome. And so things are coming out. I'm like, this today feels a little snaky. It does feel a little snaky. So I told my wife and I said, make sure, I said, keep an eye out. I said, because we may see some stuff today. I don't want the dogs to find a rattlesnake, obviously. And out in the area that we're at, there's definitely, because there's rattlesnakes everywhere. So we don't want them to find them. And then we took them over to walked them over hills and stuff, took them over to the dog park, let them run around, play with another dog. And then when we were leaving, we were walking out of it and I'm walking by these big rocks that are in this thing. I'm like, "Hey," and I reached down and it was the photo that I have, the thumbnail of it up, is a little garter snake, So, and the two bad things about garter snakes in particular, I like catching all snakes, but those garter snakes are very smelly because they secrete stuff. So they'll poop on you and then they also secrete stuff. Their defense mechanism is like a skunk. They kind of like spray you with stuff. They kind of musk you. And so it smells awful. And I'm sure tastes awful for the things that would want to eat them, which is almost everything: foxes and coyotes and birds of prey. And we have, some guys have the peacocks out there, and turkeys will definitely do, vultures, everything. I mean, just everything, because snakes are little and they're easy prey. And so that's one of their defense mechanisms. So we'll do that. And they also tend to be kind of bitey because they're just trying to stop you from eating them. But this one was actually fairly nice. He opened his mouth a bunch, but he didn't ever bite. And so he was kind of cool. And it was nice to see, like, the first snake of the season. I like going out and seeing all that stuff. And we got to see all kinds of stuff. Rabbits are running around and you saw, vultures, and you see deer and quail and turkeys and all kinds of stuff. So it's kind of cool. So that was a good day. I posted a Instagram and Facebook social media video or shorts today on a discussion about the two different, well, there are more than two, but the two that I focused on were T4 and V-band hot sides. We offer, and from Richard Holdner Performance, we offer usually both of those for the different kinds of turbos that we sell: the G42, the 3584, the G30, although we're probably might be replacing that with something else. And then the smaller ones that we use as twins and stuff. We have, you usually try to offer both of those, and we're trying to, and this was necessary for me too, to try to educate people on what's going on with the V-band stuff. And it's a better choice. I didn't realize it after until doing like lots of testing with it and doing and looking at the information that's available online and stuff. But the V-band is a better choice. I mean, if you look at it and compare a T4 versus a V-band with the same AR, the V-band not only does it flow more, but it has better response rate too than a T4. The other thing that I like about it is that the V-band also, I just like the flexibility of it. So when you put it, like when you're installing it, it's a lot easier to put on and take off. So if you have to work on something, get the turbo out of the way or change the turbo or whatever you have to do, the V-band just makes it a lot easier. It's a lot better for us when we're dyno testing than having a T4, because the T4 is going to be held on by 4 bolts. One of those bolts, the bolt and nut oftentimes, or just a bolt that goes into a threaded portion of a T4 flange, which can also be problematic, is always difficult to get to. And it's very difficult to get to if you have other things around it, tubing and wastegates and discharge tubes and all that stuff. So the V-band is one bolt and the whole thing comes off, as long as whatever else it needs to be connected to, the oil feed and the drain and all that stuff. But the turbo itself that's just it. This is one bolt that comes off. So it's really, really nice. The other thing is when you put it on and you locate it on the flange, that it also allows some movement, some wiggle room for the turbo, so that if you have to move it, clock it just a little bit to get something to line up just right, or to miss something else, or get something away from something that's, from the hot side that shouldn't be next to something that's, you don't want to get something that hot. So that's better. Like when you have a T4, and you have the T4 mounted, it's part of the exhaust manifold or it's welded there, whatever. When you do that, the turbo's going right there. there's not a lot of adjustability unless you have a whole bunch of slop in the bolt holes, and then you could, kind of shimmy it just a little bit. But the V-band, you can rotate a bunch, and once you have everything in the right place, you shouldn't have to move it a lot. But there is, like I said, there is that wiggle room, which I do like about the V-band, and it's easier to put on and stuff, and it just works better. It flows better, and it has better response. So, if you're looking at getting one of those, I would err toward the V-band thing if you guys are looking at those kinds of turbos. T4s still work, and T4s are probably, I would guess, in terms of sales, not just based on our stuff, but everybody's, Viron's over at VS and Robert at Force Performance, and just everybody, that probably T4s still, outsell the V-bands, I would imagine. But maybe people will start kind of coming around. We'll see what you guys got going on for tonight. Hopefully you guys are having a good weekend. Staying mostly out of trouble. Let's see. Okay, if you bought a turbo this weekend, and you should, would you choose a V-band over a T4? Okay, there we go. So let's see what we got going on. It's cold there, Eric. It's still, I don't know what I'm looking at the temperatures here, but it's not showing it for some reason. But it's still really warm today. It's nice. Do you see high back pressure limiting RPM ranges, as in stops making power at lower RPM than expected from back pressure? No, back pressure not normally the cause of that. That's usually something else. What I can see is the cold side of that situation. If the turbo is not sized big enough to support the desired combination of boost and relative to NA power at RPM, then you'll see a falling boost curve. The other way that you can see a falling boost curve, and this comes into play if you have high back pressure, is the back pressure might be opening the wastegate. Because if you're not controlling that and you have a lot of back pressure, however you're controlling the wastegate, the back pressure is working against that. So that can be problematic. And again, a falling boost curve can definitely change the shape of the power curve. Raccoons are out here in Tennessee. Fed one on the porch, turned back and had 5 more of the bandits come out of nowhere. Yeah, we have raccoons in the backyard, and we have possums out here. Lots of squirrels. We have an orange tree that the squirrels just love. They just, in fact, I've cut a bunch of them in half and set them out there, and they just sit there and munch at them, much to the torment of our golden retrievers who just are like, I cannot believe you do that. Just let those squirrels do that. And the squirrels have attitude too. They'll sit in front of the window and just torment the dog. If you could put any engine into what is the cheapest dollar to horsepower for a daily, not a race car, just something to drive and be fun, that will last, reliable daily. Well, are you starting with something? Right now, the Ellis is a really good way to go. It's not for me to put anything in. It's actually for you, because the guy that, I mean, if you know more about small block Chevys, or you know more about Mopars, or you know more about Fords or whatever, then you'd be better suited to do that, because you understand it more. And if things go wrong, you can fix it. There isn't one that's better than all others, with price as the only variable. Stinky is how grass snakes are around here. I don't know that is a grass snake a solid color? I'm not that familiar with a grass snake. When is the G42 kit coming out? The G42 kit is the same as the 3584 kit. That's the same kit. We're just waiting for the exhaust manifold casting. V-Van's the way to go for sure. It sure makes things a lot easier, Todd. Power adder included. Do you know about the Reman Extreme Performance motors? I don't know about those. Spent most of the weekend work on the K1200 GT. Is that a motorcycle? Just PR to half marathon today, 153. Oh, and V-band all the way. Dude, congratulations on the half marathon. I've run that distance one time. And I don't know if that's on the list to do again. Worked on an old alternator for 2 days just to save myself $100. There you go. I know, and that's the thing. Hey, let's see. I that means I'm worth like, I don't know, $3 an hour or something. 75 degrees today. Yeah, it was nice here too. Magson 2650 on an LS427 or a 4.5 liter supercharger. Leave twin 76s due to space on the new build. Yeah, either one of those. A 4.5 liter will certainly support more power than a 2650 will, because it's a lot bigger. So if that's what you're trying to do, that's a good choice. But the 2650 is definitely a 4-digit power level blower. What if boost curve isn't falling? It could be rising. Is it facing pumping losses? I don't know how you could have a rising boost curve and not have the power continue to rise. Are you monitoring boost back pressure? Just got your turbo set up to be replaced easily and buy those cheap turbos. Treat them like consumables. Are there test cams still available? If so, I'll email you. I think I still have one or two. I might have one Truck Plus cam left. Those actually went fairly fast. I have a 416 iron LY6, planning on using a G42, hoping for 1,000 horsepower. Does a Truck Plus cam provide enough vacuum for stock brakes on a Tahoe? Yeah, we're driving around with that cam on a Tahoe right now, on an 05 Tahoe in a 5.3. But I don't know if Jimmy has, I don't remember if Jimmy has the, what's it called? The hydraulic thing for the brakes. What's it called? V-band all the way, boost it. V-band. My daughter has a 6.5 foot long. Oh, a wreck python. Nice. She's been raising her less than a foot as a baby snake. It's off white and purple squares. Wow. Can't believe. Yeah, they are nice. If you grow up with them, I've had iguanas and things like that, and then so they kind of get to trust you, and they'll just kind of chill on you and stuff. It's really cool. Amazing sauce. If running Hydro Boost, that's what it is. I knew it was some kind of liquid thing. If running E85 is an intercooler really necessary, under 12 pounds of boost, direct injected motor, LT1. I would say yes. I don't know why you would not do an intercooler. I don't know yet, but it was wondering. It was just setting so long it rusted up solid and wouldn't spin. It spins now. Oh, the alternator. Okay. Yeah, if it was rusted and it rusts in the bearing area, even if it spins now, I don't know how long that's going to last. It might be running and kind of chewing itself up. Hydro Boost. Yeah, that's good. My brakes on my truck feel a little suspect. And my power steering's leaking, so all the fluid leaks out of it. I need to fix that hose. I'm sure it's something simple. What are the common things that go out in these power steerings? I'm pretty sure it's a line. Just for a neat build, turbo into intake. Okay. Yeah, it will make less power without the intercooler, but you can run just a turbo. And the nice thing about a direct injected motor is it's less susceptible to detonation. I mean, L76 Gen 4 aluminum block 6-liter, planning on turbocharging. I was wondering how much boost can the stock bottom end handle for a semi-daily driver? Well, if it's a daily driver or a semi-daily driver, you're not going to run all of the boost on it. I mean, you're never going to be able to put down 1,500 horsepower, not for anything that's street related. So you can easily go to 1,000 horsepower with that block. I don't know. I take that back. It's a 6-liter aluminum block. Honestly, don't know about that one. We normally don't use a 5.7, a 6-liter, but the 6-liters I've been talking about have been LS2s and LS3 blocks. But I don't know about that L76. I'm thinking that it's going to be like an LS2 block. And so it's not for really high boost stuff. We don't use them for that anyway. We use the iron blocks or the 5.3 blocks. So less than 1,000, let's say. When do you plan on getting bar link lifters necessary to have them in a build? No, I don't know. I mean, we can get link bar lifters because we're a BTR dealer. So if BTR has them, that means that we also have them, but they're not necessary for any of the kind of motor or for our customers really that put stuff together. A link bar lifter is more necessary for other engine families. And for an LS, it would be maybe a solid roller or some odd block where a factory one couldn't be used. There's rust around the armature and the field windings. Bearings were good. Okay, that's good. That's how stuff rusts here in northern Michigan. Road salt, yeah. Link bar lifters for LS. LT builds are great. Yeah, they're not really necessary given. I mean, we're running that junkyard motor that we're running a 7700 a lot. And so I just don't, I don't know how much where people are going to go where a link bar thing is going to be necessary. What spacers are you using with the RHP injectors on truck manifold? We're not using any spacers. The injectors should work perfectly on a truck manifold and a Trailblazer SS. That's kind of what they were designed for. You might need to use spacers for other manifolds. 6 degrees in northern Michigan. So it's not summertime in northern Michigan. If you bought a turbo this weekend, and you should, would you choose a V-band over a T4? 92%. Man. 92 versus 8. That's a win. That's a win for V-bands. That's V-bands in the house. Summertime in northern. Yeah. Got my sinks water trickling. Or is what on sale? There's no link bar lifter sale because I don't know that we've ever even sold any of those. The turbos are always priced like they're on sale. Somebody had asked me that. They'd sent me a message or a comment and said, why is your stuff so much less? And I'm like, well, because our business model is different than Summit or than BTR or Texas Speed or anybody. It's like we don't have dealers and distributors and wholesalers or whatever. We don't have all those different tier level stuff. We sell it to the customer. And so we don't have to have our price structure built into that. So, because we've had people ask us about, I want to be a dealer. I'm like, well, we don't really have that. we don't have profit built in for a dealer, setup. Thanks for all the information over the years. Happy to help. You're just saying buy this weekend. Yeah, you should buy a turbo this weekend. That really goes for any weekend. Think the V-band flows more? Ronnie, they do. They flow more, and they're at any given AR, the V-band flows more than a T4, and it's more responsive. Because that's the other question I got when I did that post today on Facebook and Instagram. Is like I said, this V-band outflows the T4, and they're like, yeah, but you're going to lose response. I'm like, no, that's the good thing, is you don't lose response. That's why I said that V-band G42, even on the 5.3, is a really good turbo. How does a 5-angle or 3-angle affect engine power band? Why do you say you need to spec the valve job to the cam and intake you have? I don't ever say that. I don't agree with that. I don't think, I think that that's even more nitpicky than saying that you need to have a camshaft for rec port heads or for cathedral port heads, or a carbureted camshaft or an EFI camshaft or a turbo camshaft. The valve job thing is just beyond me. If you can do a multi-angle valve job and pick up power, that would be good. But the other thing that might happen, and again, this is really nitpicky, is that you could look at, maybe the valve job over scavenging slightly at some very low lift during overlap or something. But again, you'd have to do some really, really detailed testing to figure out that that's happening. So I don't know. 6-liter LS, truck plus cam, or low buck truck, G42 turbo. Which one are you picking for 1/8 of a mile? Power glide, 434 gears. What converter do you have in this thing? I would imagine on a power glide, you probably have a fairly high stall converter. And if you do, pick the bigger cam. Do you know the installed height on LT1 heads by chance? I don't know off the top of my head. All the other stuff we see is 1.8, but I don't know that the LT shares that off the top of my head. I don't remember. I've tested a few of them. Like I have the L83, and then I was at BTR when they did a bunch of testing on LT stuff, but I don't remember. I haven't taken enough of those apart to remember exactly what that is. Let's see. Let's go online. That's L83 spring installed height, 660 lift. Yeah, that doesn't tell me anything. Amazon. These are designed specifically for an LT1. Let's see if they're giving that number at 1-800. Perfect for low lift cams. They're saying 1-800 is the installed height on. I just looked up a couple of aftermarket springs. I wonder why that is. Is there more square inches of area with the V-band flange? I think shape and I think size both have something to do with it. Because I know that, if we go back to the big block Chevy days, that the rec port heads were the performance heads and the oval port heads were the non-performance things. But that's just because they made that rec port head better. I mean, they soon found out that all of the super head guys soon found out that on a rectangular port, that the corners of the rectangle don't flow anything. So if you round those off, and they started, instead of an oval, they made it into a roval. So it was a little bit square on the edges and then rounded in those corners, that they could make the port opening smaller, which helped, and not reduce flow at all. And so I think shape probably has something to do with that too. Is it possible to put LT heads on LM7? Yeah, you can. It takes a little bit of work, But there's no reason that you would want to do that, because it would take a completely different camshaft. It would take a different, you have to have the LT rocker assembly, push rods, exhaust manifold, valve covers, intake manifold. I mean, you got to change everything basically. And it doesn't really gain you anything. And then you have to obviously fill if you're going to run it port injected, you have to fill in the direct injected holes with plugs. I mean, they're all that stuff's available, but again, I don't know why anyone would go down that for whatever perceived like value it has. I don't know that you're going to get any power from doing that. It's a very, very common question. I'm going to make this hybrid. Like, yeah, that's a great idea. You really should do that. You should go down that road one time, and then you'll never go down that road again, because it's it's a long road. It takes a lot of stuff. I remember Brian and I talked about that long time ago. Like, yeah, look how much better these L83 heads are. Like, yeah, we should put those on a 5.3. I'm like, yeah, that'd be a great idea. And then we're like, oh yeah, that's right. The valves are in a different spot. That's a different cam. Yeah, it's a different cam. That's easy though. He's a cam guy. You can put the cam in it. Okay, yeah, those are different rockers. Yeah, I'll have to put the LT rockers in there. Well, and if we use that head, you got to use the exhaust manifold and the intake manifold. And then if we're going to run it port injected, like run it as an LS, then we have to, because there's no driver assembly for that. So we have to fill in those. And then you have no accessory drive that you can run on it, because LT heads on an LS block, nothing lines up. Now I think that they have something for it. But we're like, yeah, you're basically changing everything. I'm like, why don't you just get an L83 instead? That's better, because it was designed for that, and it makes a lot more power. It has VVT, and it's just a better deal. Stock 706s, what power level, RPM level are they restriction? Stock 706 heads flow like I don't know, let's call it 240. So if you can make 2 horsepower for peak CFM, 480, it takes a lot to get to that power level with a stock 706 head. Easier if the motor's bigger than a 5.3 to do that. Like, I've run them on 6 liters before, but it doesn't stop at some level. Like, they don't, I mean, it just means you have more draw on it. And so you get the head to flow more. Like I said, if you put those heads on a bigger motor, like a 6 liter or a 408, you'll make more than that level, because we've done that a lot. But that's not a good way to go. You pick up so much power if you just put better flowing heads on it. I think I've made more than 500 with a 706 head, but it was on a 6 liter with a big cam in it. Thanks, Richard. I'll be listening and installing injectors I got. Nice. Richard, do you think the Ford dropped the ball by not putting in 351 in a Mustang? Yeah, I've said that since back in the Muscle Mustangs days, that needed to be in there, because it would have been, it'd been better everywhere around. I mean, I don't know why that everything didn't have, like, an aluminum GT40 head would have been awesome. A 351 aluminum GT40 head, roller rockers on it. A Cobra style 351 manifold would have been great, because all of that is like factory stuff. And then you could have used the HO cam with, like, a different, like a roller rocker or something, or maybe even a little bit more cam. I mean, let's go crazy and want all of it. But they had enough production pieces there where they could have had a fairly serious, like, I think a 300 horsepower 351 in the Mustang would have been cool. Have you tested MSD, Holley, or carbon tall intake? An L83. I'm doing a 6.2, the G42, wondering which intake. The fact that you have a turbo on it has nothing to do with the intake. The intake is going to decide where you make power. You could run a stock L86 intake manifold on there and max that turbo out. So you don't have to have another intake for that. But yeah, I sent a bunch of intakes over to BTR, and they have all the test data. We did run a Holley on it. I ran a high ram. I think they ran the MSD. Oh, they might have run the carbon PTR or something. Fast LSX intake or Trailblazer S with a Trek Norris cam and a 108 LSA. The LSA has nothing to do with the intake manifold. The intake manifold has to do with if you run a fast LSXR or an LSXRT, they're the same thing. They make the same power. But if you run that manifold, it makes more power than a Trailblazer SS. But the amount of gain that you get will be a function of how much how much power the motor's making. So Trek Norris is a fairly small cam. So you're not asking the motor or the intake manifold to flow a lot. So the gain that you get from a fast manifold is not going to be as much as it would be if you had ported heads and a bigger cam. Then when you put the fast on there, it wants more intake manifold, and so it will respond accordingly. The RHP 1600 be too much and less responsive than 1400 twins for an L33 truck plus cam, 3500 stall, 28 in a single cab. Well, my question would be, are you wanting to make 1600 horsepower? Like, what power level are you trying to get to? That should be enough stall to where spool rate's not going to be a problem. But the question is, if you're only going to run 1200 horsepower or 1300 horsepower or whatever, then I would put the smaller turbos on there. Truck or Trailblazer SS manifold, 90 millimeter throttle body. You're not going to put a 90 millimeter throttle body on the truck manifold because it's only a 78 millimeter opening. So if you have a Trailblazer SS, then put a 90 on it. A cam is small, 215 at 50, was wanting intake to carry the top end, kind of like the mismatch combo you did. I didn't see what other intakes you were talking about. What head did you recommend for a 5.7 LS1 trying to make 550 NA? I'm looking at TFS CNC 215s or SCAS 220s. To get 550 is going to take a really good intake. It's going to take at least a fast. And if you look at what we did, a high ram made that kind of power with really good ported heads and it's going to take a big camshaft to get there too. What kind of horsepower do you think I'm going to get out of my 60 with a stock truck intake and a stage 1 BTR cam 370? What is a 60? Oh, 60 maybe? I'm scrolling back to see if I could find more information on your combination. I'm not seeing it though. And I don't know what stage 1 cam you have. Congrats on the snake. Yeah, it was awesome. Lisa's like, oh, yeah, it smells awful. I said, yeah. And so I went and washed my hands, but she's like, yeah, that's not. I said, water's not going to take it off. We got to use Dawn or something to really get into it. 6-liter flat tops, 317s. I don't know what specs are. I just need the duration kind of on that, whatever that cam is. But I'm thinking like with our Truck Plus, a Trailblazer SS, 317s that were not ported, we were in the mid 400s, 450, 460. And so the flat tops might be better than that because ours was an LQ4. I get everything and anything from the junkyard. Yep, that's a good place. Using a fast 102 and a big cam, which head would you lean toward? Well, an ASCAS 220 flows enough to probably make that power output. We ported our 220s. A CNC 215 definitely flows. A CNC 215 is going to flow more than the 220 does, I think. Use Fast Orange. Yeah, I use Dawn and it works fine. DTR stage 1 V2. Yeah, I don't know what the I need to know what the specs are, but if it's like a, let's say that's a 218 to 220 at 50 on the intake, that's where we were. So you might be more than that if you have more compression. Compression is going to add 3 to 4% per one full point. So let's say you added a full point. You're going to add another 12 or 15 horsepower or so from what we did. Will the Truck Plus be okay on a street setup with twin turbos? On a 5.3 or a 6-liter? Jimmy right now has our single turbo, but he's got a 3584 and the Truck Plus cam on a 5.3. On a 6-liter, it'll be fine. And then it would depend on how you size your twins and what power level you want and how you want them to come on and stuff. For a street setup, I would pick a smaller cam and I would pick small turbos because you're going to be a lot happier to do that if you do that. Got a great deal on 317 heads. The block's been decked. Did you deck the block a lot? Did you ever measure to see where the piston was to begin with? Because sometimes they're already at 0 or already out a little bit. Well, twin 67 66s be good. Fit for a 496. Target of 1400. Drag and drive. Yeah, I don't. It's hard to base it on size because different cost turbos and different generations of turbos of that same size flow wildly different. So you have one 76 millimeter turbo that supports 800 horsepower and one 76 millimeter turbo that supports, I don't know, 1100 or 1200 or something. And so it's just they're just not the same. Which ones from your site would you recommend? I want twin ball bearings. What power level are you trying to run? Thanks again, Richard. I will be going with the 1600 kit. The S10 will be a track. Okay. Yeah, if you're going to use that power, that's good. Manly valves. I don't really know. I bought it. Okay. I get it. One of the things you want to make sure of is the weight of the Manly valves relative to the stock one, and only in reference to how much spring pressure you need. So if you have heavier valves, more spring pressure is required. Otherwise, you get into valve float a lot easier. You think balancing a rotating assembly is very crucial in first-gen Chevys? For instance, if you were just boring and swapping to 30 over pistons. Yeah, are you swapping to 30 over Ford's pistons from cast pistons? Because the balance on your assembly is going to be way off. And you may not like the vibration. And if it is vibrating like that, it's going to hurt something. Hopefully it doesn't come above the deck. I ordered the Truck Plus cam this week. All right, way to go. Maybe have a little extra on tap, up to 1,000 on the high end of things for a while. Shooting for 800 on a daily tune. Yeah, I think Scottish, I would get the G30s, which are the 1400s. Get 2 of the G30 770s because I think Jimmy has ball bearing versions of those. Think about taking the 660 springs off and putting on 560 springs. Yeah, you don't need a 660 spring if you're going to run a 550 lift cam. As long as, like I said, I don't know that you change the valve weight a lot going to the Manly stuff. I don't ever remember measuring them. But a 415 LY6 LS3 head, single G42 Truck Plus cam, 480 373 gears, and so have good street manners. 1,000 horsepower is the goal. Yeah, that cam should be fairly mild on a 415. And then I'm imagining you're going to have some kind of converter in that as well. Not that you'll need it with a 415. Perfect. Sounds like a very responsive and powerful setup in a 5,000-pound truck. Should get it moving. Yeah, you should have more than enough power. I got an abandoned project short block LQ4 that was sleeved and bored to 382 for cheap. Like to do a truck plus, ported 706s, Trailblazer SS. Do you think it would make 600 crank? No, I don't think it'll be. I don't think so. And the ported 706 heads would have to be really, really good. And I don't think you get there with a Trailblazer SS. I think you have to go with a fast or something like that. They have to be really good heads to get to 600 and a really big cam. Performance gains just to be head from balancing. Yeah. Do you know anyone running a Ford 8.8, for instance, from an Explorer in an old muscle car? I don't, but I would imagine that's got to be common, right? I have an 8.8 in my Mustang, and now it's an old car. It's an 88, but not a 60s or 70s muscle car. It's not a boomer car. Down to 80-20. What happened to our 92%, man? Did we lose confidence? Heard of them gaining popularity due to the price tags of 9 inches. There's still 9 inches in wrecking yards to be found. I just don't know about the cost of going through them or shortening them or narrowing them if you have to do that. I don't know what that is. Probably a lot. And unless you're really hooking and booking, an 8.8 you could make pretty good. I think I'm going to have a problem with Morel lifters. I bought the 7717s. I have zero experience with Morels. I've never used them on anything. We always just use the stock ones that came out of the wrecking yard, or like these LS7 lifters that we have on the site. Richard, on a stock fresh LY6 rebuild, will there be much difference in sound between Truck Plus and a Lubbock truck cam? Wanting the best sound with a stock converter, just to cruise around. If you're talking about idle quality, I think that those are going to be comparable. There should be a difference in the sound slightly at wide open throttle and probably more at the top end. But I think that they're going to idle in a similar manner. Some people say the Morels are trash. I don't know. I haven't heard that, but like I said, I have zero experience with them. I have an LM7 block and crank. Can I run L33 rods and pistons? Yeah, that's just a flat top piston and the rods. Do I need to balance rotating assembly? Yes, because the rod and piston assembly would have been balanced with that crank, and your crank is going to be different. Now, it would surprise me if the crank that you had. The good thing, though, is the L33 stuff is a 24X. So it might be close. I just don't know how close, having not tested it. You could probably have your balance shop like weigh the piston and do the piston and rod assembly and measure both of them, just one of each of them, and go, oh yeah, that'll be fine. I think Calvin recently built a car with an 8.8. I have a video on the differential. Have you ever heard of ceramic coated main bearing and cam bearings, or the total seal rings, or people that notch the top of the cylinder to get more air around the valve? Is that all just snake oil? Well, one at a time. The notching the cylinder has been done even back in the 60s. Chevrolet did that particularly on their 396, because it's a small bore, to put their standard rec port head in that they also used on the 427 and the 454, both of which have bigger bores. So they did do that, and they did it for airflow, but less for that, so that the valve wouldn't hit the edge of the bore. And so you don't want that to happen. That is a possible thing. That's not something that I would consider doing on any of the applications that we're talking about right now. Total Seal rings, I have used. If you're talking about, Total Seal is just a company. So Total Seal makes a whole bunch of different style rings. You might be talking about like a zero gap ring or a gapless ring. Yeah, we've tried those on NA motors. I think you can get from another kind of good ring like Total Seal makes great stuff. I don't know that I don't know that that's something you should spend your money on. The ceramic coating on, I haven't heard of ceramic coated bearings, but that, I'm not saying that's not a possibility, but that's a possibility. And I don't think that I would do it because we have such success without doing that. I'm new to the lives. Thank you, by the way. How often do you do these? I try to do them once a day or once a night. Why are turbos not standard on more truck and cars from the big three? Seems like a great way of gaining efficiency and power and fuel mileage. A turbo is probably not going to get you better fuel mileage, but it definitely gets you more power. And I think you'll see more turbo stuff with smaller displacement motors, because going to the smaller displacement motor can get you better fuel mileage under cruise. And then the turbo gives you the power back. And they're getting real sophisticated with turbos and spool up and electronic controls and direct injection and all kinds of things. So I think we'll see more of that. The only reason I'm using a 9-inch over an 8.8 is I got a 9-inch for a good deal, and I like the idea of dropout carriers. Yeah, you can change gears. Hello, all our new Chevy fleet trucks have 4-cylinder turbos. Okay. Yeah, they were talking about, I mean, Dodge did that with the Hemi. They made that 6-cylinder turbo thing. I think they're now reverting back to the Hemi because I think that that's what the American market wants. But you see a lot of those Ecotechs and EcoBoosts and various things from Ford and Chevy. So they do have those. And we have them, BMW and Mercedes and all those guys obviously have that stuff too. They don't sound like trucks. Yeah, we pulled up when we were leaving from catching the snake that I caught today. When we were leaving with the dogs, and we pulled up to a light. We were turning to go, and there was somebody that had I think it was an Escalade that had a can. And I'm like, oh, that guy's got that thing hopped up. Richard, are the specs for the low buck truck cam published somewhere so I can fill in the blanks? Chat GPT is asking to help me learn how to tune my truck. Only the specs that we list on the store. But why are you asking chat to help you tune? Meanwhile, the rumors out of the diesel world seem to be displacement going to the moon. Becoming the muscle car battle seems fitting. Oh, for diesel stuff? Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. I would think that as long as they had the strength of the motor, that just adding fuel and boost seems to kind of be the way to go with turbo diesel stuff. The cam specs are not necessary for tuning. I have that discussion with people a lot, with tuners that tell me, oh, I need to have the opening and closing events to tune this. I'm like, no, you don't. You don't need that at all. Supposedly GM, Ford, and Dodge are scrapping the 6.6 displacement and going to greater than 8.1 for diesel stuff. been a while since I caught a live feed, but I listen every night. Thank you for your support. So we're going to close out our poll at 78 and 22. If you bought a turbo this weekend, would you choose a V band? Most people saying yes on the V. Everybody's all about that V, yo. Just rumors online. Yeah, if anything, I've learned from the twin turbo V6 from the Skog and Dickey guys and Kurt that I shouldn't listen to that stuff. I should just go to the source and ask them directly and say, hey, look, what's going on with this turbo motor? Because it's really, really cool. Starting power and performance class soon, and then I'll be on to my GM specialty course. Oh, that'll be cool. So what are they going to cover in the power and performance thing? Get my GM credentials. Nice. After putting together a Turbo LS with a T4, I can see the advantages of being able to clock it on the other axis. It is good. I do that a lot, actually, when I do stuff on the engine dyno, because obviously on the engine dyno, I've got more leeway where to put stuff. But sometimes I need to move the turbo a lot of times to aim the exhaust, get it away from plug wires, or to miss things that are back behind the engine, wires or whatever, things that are back for the dyno. And so that makes it a lot easier. I'm like, oh yeah, all we have to do is loosen this and go and just move it just a little bit, or to get the discharge tube to fit right, or and I really like, and I don't have it on a lot of the turbos, but V-band compressor and exhaust housings are really nice too, so that you can rotate those. 69 votes on the poll and only 30 thumbs up. I know, where are the thumbs up, man? We got 54 people here and only 31. Pennsylvania's in the house. Lots of tuning, detailed stuff on valve events and timing and fuel, I'm sure. I'm looking forward to it. Oh, that'll be cool. Do you work for West Tech? I don't work for West Tech. And how do you learn how to tune? Did you take a formal school? I did not take a formal school. Luckily, I got schooling from the guys at West Tech, from Eric and from Ish. I understand what the motor wants already. So going in, I knew that. I just needed to know how to, like, what buttons to push to add fuel, take away fuel, to add timing, to take away timing. And since I understand, power curves and boosts and all that stuff, I'm able to apply that. And I just needed to learn like how to manipulate it, basically. And and I learned it out of necessity, because I always had to have somebody there when I was running something fuel injected. I always had to have somebody there to do that. And nobody ever wants to work at the speed that I want to work at, because the tuning part of it needs to happen really fast. Like, let's just get it done, because I got like 6 cams I got to test. So we're not going each cell at a time and changing a number. I'm like, highlight all of this and give me 5 clicks. Good. Okay, let's run it. Okay, good. And after you realize, if you've been testing for a long time, you're like, okay, it's 12.7. It's not going to do anything else at 13.1 or 12.5 or whatever. It doesn't change the power hardly at all. I know, because I've tested that again and again and again and again and again. So I'm like, look, that's what it does. Let's move on. Let's put the other cam in it. And so I can get a lot of cams done in the one day that's very expensive. One day of dyno testing. Way to build the 350 Chevy. That's good. Got to build the 350 Chevy. I'm looking forward to advance. We're adding nitrous to it. Going for dyno numbers. Good. Awesome channel. Happy to help, man. We put the 350 in a T bucket. Put it on the dyno and look for peak. So are you doing it on chassis dyno then? Because that's also cool. That's its own level of understanding and testing. because a chassis dyno is a different thing than an engine dyno is. And so chassis dyno, I spent a lot of time on dyno jets and did a lot of testing because I had a dyno jet. And so I did endless testing, and before that, the poor guys at the show shop and Steve, I love Steve from Powertrain Dynamics. So shout out to Steve and Annette. I would just do as much testing as they would allow, basically. So it was a lot. Do you have a hot rod? Do you have a few cars? In your 8.1 Vortec cam, do you have to upgrade the fuel system? I don't remember. We did already on our test motor. We had bigger injectors in it. We had our 1000s, I think, on it. Oh, I take that back. And the last time we ran it, I actually put Hemi injectors in it because those are what I had sitting around. But I don't know what the stock 8.1 fuel injector size is. And so you need enough extra fuel to be able to fuel like the 40 horsepower, 50 horsepower, whatever it is, or whatever the gain was. Can't remember off the top of my head, but you'll need enough fuel to supply that extra power level. But I don't know how much leeway you have because I don't remember what the stock injector size is. I got to imagine that an 8.1 is got to be bigger than like a 5.3 truck. What kind of power can I expect from my LM7 with an L33 rotating semi? So this, in sense, it's just you're starting out with an L33. Truck Plus, stock 862s. I don't know. You have a single plane intake, but you're running it fuel injected. So the single plane intake manifold is going to hurt you. It's not going to do well. You'd be better off if you're running it fuel injected, you'd be much better off putting a Truck Plus or a Truck Plus, a Trailblazer SS intake manifold on there. It would be way better. What would be the biggest secret you could tell me to get the most power from a 350? No machining is allowed. NOS only. Really looking forward fuel and timing and cam specs, perhaps, to really get the most. Well, what I would tell you is there's not going to be a secret to nitrous. If you can add more nitrous, you'll make more power. You're going to have to pull timing when you put nitrous in. If you're adding nitrous and fuel together, don't make it too rich. And also the camshaft, there's not a nitrous camshaft. So whatever camshaft you put in your 350 that makes the most power NA, when you then add the nitrous to it, like if you add 100 horsepower to it or 200 horsepower to it, if you start out with a 300 horsepower motor and you add 100, you're going to get to 400. But if you start out with a 350 horsepower motor and you add 100, now you have 450. So start out with as much NA power and then add as much nitrous as you can as the available octane will allow. And then we usually pull 4 degrees of timing out per 100 horsepower. And so you can do that. If you have enough octane, we don't even do that for the first 100 shot. We don't take any timing out. And then don't make the air fuel 10-1, make it 11.5 or 12-1 with the nitrous. Richard, will your injectors work on a 2K Honda? Yeah, the injectors don't care about what motor it's on as long as they fit for the length and the O-ring thickness. I don't know about the Honda because I don't know what's in there now. Like I don't know how tall they are, how the rail bolts down or any of that. But usually O-ring things is a really easy thing to solve because there are different O-rings that you can get that would make it fit. You might even be able to take the O-rings off of the Honda injector if it's similar and put those on these and put them in. And then obviously you're going to have to tune it if you run different injectors. On that note, it is time to go, and I will see you guys all tomorrow.